In this crazy game, I have to wear this form-fitting outfit and compete with a bunch of people I don't know. Chapter 15. The soft chime of crystal resonated through the air as I stirred from my slumber, the ornate chandelier above casting a warm glow across the lavish bedchamber. Morika's voice, gentle yet insistent, pulled me from the comforting embrace of sleep. I burrowed deeper into the plush, silk-encased pillow, clinging to the remnants of dreams filled with memories of home and my ailing grandfather. The thought of leaving that familiar comfort made my heart ache. Just a few more minutes, I pleaded, my words muffled against the pillow's softness. I'm afraid that's not possible. Miss Morika's footsteps, barely audible on the polished marble floor, drew closer to the intricately carved four-poster bed. With practiced care, she began to peel away the warmth of my velvet duvet. Is this how all captives are awakened? I grumbled, my voice thick with lingering drowsiness, blinking against the mellow light. I turned my gaze towards the expansive windows. Another sunset painted the meticulously manicured gardens in long, reaching shadows. Night 4 of my captivity in this bewildering new world. For nights away from everything I knew. For nights of uncertainty about my family's fate. A knot formed in my chest as I pondered the possibility that my beloved grandfather might have already passed on during my absence. I pressed my palms against my eyes, willing such grim thoughts away. What entertainment have our gracious hosts planned for tonight? I asked, observing Morika as she deftly arranged a silver breakfast tray on an antique table near the window. She offered a small shrug, her movements fluid and refined despite her position. The gentleman seemed particularly excited about something, but we servants aren't informed of the details. We're only told about your attire for the evening, and what sartorial surprise awaits me this time? I inquired, bracing myself for the answer. What peculiar ensemble would I be expected to don now? Morika gestured towards an ornate armoire. To my surprise, the outfit laid out appeared rather practical, a stretchy fabric that promised both comfort and a close fit. More physical trials. I pondered aloud. It seems likely. Unless they simply prefer to see you in form-fitting attire, Morika replied, a hint of amusement coloring her tone. I couldn't help but let out a wry chuckle. Knowing our hosts, it's probably a bit of both. Another physical trial awaited me. Perhaps this time I could avoid disappointing myself. But then I recalled Caspian's anger towards me, and his date with Isolde. Maybe it was too late. Maybe they had already formed an alliance. The thought caused an unexpected pang in my chest. But there was only one course of action available to me now. I needed to outperform everyone tonight, for my grandfather's sake. If I were the fastest, the strongest, the best match, it would be hard for Caspian to pick Isolde. William might insist he pick me, and we all knew Caspian was the strongest candidate. That was what grandfather had asked of me, and that was what I would give him, no matter how ridiculous this all seemed. I couldn't blow it this time. Caspian choosing someone else was one thing, but if he picked Isolde, that would be a disaster. It would strengthen her pack's position and would put my pack in greater jeopardy. Pulling the covers back, I stood up and stretched. My body felt good, strong, well rested. I was ready. Isolde had better watch her back, giving Morika the morning off. I got dressed in record time and pulled my hair into a ponytail. I didn't venture into the common room like normal. Instead, I spent time stretching and warming up in my room. The sting of Willow's betrayal was still raw. I thought she was my friend, my only friend, but it'd been wrong. Anger and sadness mingled together when I walked past her bedroom door, which was shut. She was avoiding me as much as I was her. What would I say to her if I saw her? Would I bitch her out? Would I simply tell her how her tie was? Would she try to apologize? Would I believe her? I didn't have time to worry about her, though the stakes were too high. Feeling antsy? I made the guards take me to the garden early. I could keep warming up and assessing the situation while also avoiding Willow. Once we were through the patio doors and into the garden, I could see it all clearly. The large rectangular field looked much different this time. Instead of barrels, there were two identical wooden obstacle courses built side by side. They reminded me of courses the human military used to train soldiers. There were climbing areas, hurdles, ramps, and places to shimmy under. There was a high ropes course and lots of high places to fall from and break my neck. It would be hard, dirty work, but it wasn't impossible. Much easier than navigating the politics of this insane situation. As I glanced around, one of the guards grunted. "Don't even think of taking off." He put the metal cuff on my wrist just as they had before. Of course, they would trap us here. They weren't as stupid as they looked. Checking out the lay of the land, a female voice asked. When I whirled, I saw that Isolde had joined me. She had clearly spent much more time on her appearance than I had. Her blonde hair was down and curled. Her makeup was flawless, and the most impressive fake eyelashes yet were glued to her lids. They were so big she looked like she would take off flying if she fluttered them fast enough. I turned back to the course, in deciding where to celebrate my win. I think over there where the cameras can get the best view. I pointed at the far end of the field. "Oh, Elise," Isolde said smugly. "You talk a big game. But honestly, what are you even doing here? You couldn't win yesterday. You lost your play to get Caspian to fall for you. Even your only friend betrayed you because you don't know how to be a leader. You should just go home and save yourself the embarrassment." Anger boiled under my skin. It took everything I had not to turn and punch her in the throat. The only one who will be embarrassed today, Isolde, is you. A nasty smile turned up the corners of her red lips. She leaned in close and whispered conspiratorially. "Do you know what Caspian said to me last night during our date? Why does your breath smell like dead cats?" I made air quotes. She said, ignoring my bait. "He said, what a relief to be with someone who isn't angry all the time. I guess he enjoys my pleasant demeanor." She giggled and fluffed her hair. "Give me a break." I rolled my eyes. "Your pleasant demeanor is about as real as those eyelashes. By the way, stop blinking so much. You're starting to hover." She gave me a cold smile. "Your childish insults don't hurt me, Elise. Not when I am still basking in the glow of my date with Caspian." I gritted my teeth. She knew just where to hit me. "Just shut up. I don't have time for your insipid conversation. I need to focus." When I started to walk away, she called after me. "They'll be happy to invite you to the wedding, though I'm not sure Caspian will want you there." What were his words? "That loathsome bitch." I tried not to let her get to me, focusing instead on tracing the course with my eyes. But damn it, she had riled me up. Did Caspian really say that? Or was she lying to upset me? I had let my anger get the best of me more than once in the beginning, so it could be true. But whatever, it didn't matter. Even if he hated me, he was the best match. I knew he was pissed at me, but it had my reasons to throw the game. If only I could talk to him. No, stop it. Getting stuck in these thought loops won't help. Just trying to shake you so she can beat you. Gritting my teeth, I decided to circle the course a few times. It would allow me to see everything better and blow off steam at the same time. By the time it made for rounds, the others were starting to show up. I skidded to a stop, feeling ready. Then I spotted him. Caspian stood on the terrace, looking down on the garden. In the moonlight, his haunted expression was nearly luminous as he gazed down. His intense eyes were fixed on me, but when I met his gaze, they darted away. Yet they left a fire burning along my skin, a sensation I couldn't ignore. How the hell was I supposed to focus again? The other girls began to filter in, as did the other vampire suitors. William was the last to make his appearance, wearing another bespoke suit. His hair slicked back and his eyes taking in everything all at once. "Ladies, welcome to your next challenge," William said, stepping onto the field. His voice boomed preternaturally loud, making me cringe inwardly. He gave a false smile. "Thank you for coming this evening and looking so splendid. Don't they look beautiful?" Gentlemen, the other vampire suitors had gathered at the far end of the yard near the finish line. They were all there. Cowan, Henry, Elon, and others whose names I couldn't remember. Caspian had left his perch on the balcony and joined them. While he stood silent, the others whistled and catcalled the girls, who seemed to enjoy the attention. There seemed to be a fun banter between some of the couples, the ones who were focusing on enjoying their time here more than anything else. But not all of us had the luxury of simply relaxing and going with the flow. Some of us had duty and the thorns breathing down our necks. Doggedly, I straightened my spine and set my eyes on the course. Get to the rules, I thought. Tonight is about more than beauty. Tonight, you will be able to showcase other talents, mainly strength, agility, and cunning. Interesting. Cunning. All 10 ladies will race from one end to the other. The first 2 contestants to complete the obstacle course will then compete in another challenge to determine the final winner. That person will be allowed to choose one male for a private date. The rest will again be paired up randomly. The other girls murmured to each other, but I didn't meet anyone's gaze. I knew if I made eye contact with Willow or Isolde, it would be far too distracting. The other incentive to do well in this competition is that 3 females will be asked to leave the competition. If I really wanted to go home, should I just flub the game and get kicked out? But what did they mean we would be sent home? I imagined if we lost, our options would be the lesser vampires, which was not what my grandfather had instructed. The rules of this game were growing more confusing by the second, but I suspected that was William's doing. If he kept us in the dark, no one could complain about the shady things he did. One thing I did know was I couldn't win and claim Caspian. The consequences of that would ripple beyond this castle. Either way, I couldn't lose. Ladies, please line up. 5 on each course. I darted over to the first course, taking the center spot. The twin courses appeared to be identical, but the soil on this side seemed a little loose. I noticed it as I ran around the courses ahead of time. It might not matter, but anything could be an advantage. Sylvia lined up beside me and gave me a wink. This ought to be fun, right? Elise. I gave a quick smile. The best. Where's your friend? Sylvia asked, scanning the crowd. The one who gets drunk at any opportunity. I cracked my neck and stretched out my calves. What friend? Willow had joined Isolde and 3 of her minions on the other course. Good riddance. I see, Sylvia said. Not all friends are as trustworthy as they seem. You got that right. I replied. On my word. We will begin, William said, edging closer for a better view. Oh, one more thing I forgot to tell you. You'll be able to use your wolf powers on this course. What the hell did he just say? On your mark. Get set, go. Girls lurched forward in their human form, staggering toward the obstacles. Yet some seemed to realize that their shifter powers were no longer blocked. The bracelet might have kept us in the area, but somehow, our powers had been returned. Oh shit. It was on now. I closed my eyes, focused on the pull of the moon, found the swirling tendrils of magic that had been blocked since Wed arrived, and latched on. I exploded into my wolf form and took off running. Chapter 16. I could shift again. Nothing else mattered as I felt my human form morph into my wolf form once again. Claws sprang from my fingers as my skin broke out into white fur. My clothes and shoes shredded into pieces that fluttered onto the lawn. Yet the vampire's metal cuff remained, changing its size. Bones creaked and twisted, but there was no pain during the transformation. Instead, there was a tingle of excitement and possibilities like before opening a much anticipated present. My wolf form meant power, strength, and endurance. It meant control and focus. My worries melted away as I took my first steps as a wolf. Damn, it felt good to be back, to be whole and not defenseless. But I didn't have time to revel in my new body. Others were shifting and starting towards the course, bulky wolf bodies rushing onto the first ramp. Sylvia, now a caramel-colored wolf, took tentative steps on the planks, testing out her new weight. Others began to do the same. So careful, like they were afraid to break something. I didn't feel fear. I felt ready. Time to kick the ass I was talking about. I tore forward, my paws slapping on the board that groaned under me, and I left Sylvia and the others behind. The ramp led up to a suspended bridge of slats that rocked as I approached. The thin slats might not hold me, but the bridge was only about 12 feet off the ground. Doing this in my human form would have been very different. Indeed. Let it break, I thought as I stepped on the first board. I can take a fall from this height. The rope creaked, barely holding only half my weight. My keen wolf senses heard the rope straining. If I stood my whole weight on this thing for very long, it would certainly break. But if I ran across, I fixed my eyes on the goal and tore forward. My feet found the boards, barely touching them as I ran across the swaying bridge. Having 4 points of contact sure came in handy in a situation like this, since I could keep the paws planted as I stepped swiftly and kept moving forward. I was nearly there when a board beneath my back leg snapped. My body sagged, my front leg scrambling on the wood as I started to fall. "Elise," someone called from the ground. A male voice. "Caspian." I didn't have time to consider. If I fell, I would have to start over again. I had to keep going. There were other wolves behind me who wanted to take my place in the lead, and I was about to let them. Yet my body was slipping. My back legs dangled in open space as my front claws tried to dig into the wood. To no avail. Teeth. Damn it. Damn it. You have teeth. Just in time. I twisted my head sideways and caught a piece of broken rope in my teeth. It stopped my fall and gave me time to yank myself onto the boards that remained. Claws scraped on the wood, digging in and allowing me back up on my feet. A hoot went up from the vamps at the end. Someone was definitely cheering for me. I clambered over the last slats in the bridge, finding the solid support of a platform on the other side. One glance at the other identical obstacle course showed Isolde in the lead with her minions behind her. She was nearly across her bridge, taking a more careful approach of crouching down and stepping across. I looked over my shoulder to see Sylvia taking her first steps on the bridge behind me. She was coming for me too, wasting no time. I bounded from the platform to the next one ahead, which was higher still. There were 5 of them, built on telephone poles that went higher into the sky. How the vamps built this in one day, I had no idea. It had to be magic. But that wasn't my concern. What was concerning was the rope swing that waited at the top platform. A rope was attached to a pillar on the side of the platform and then strung high above, waiting for me to swing across to the other side of an immense gap. One puny rope between me and the platform on the far side. That was it. And now I was 30 feet in the air. A fall would hurt and injure me severely. A wolf wouldn't stand a chance with that tiny rope, but a human would have to shift. I would have to shift back and swing like a monkey. Naked. Shit. Even Tarzan had a loincloth. I had nothing. Why oh why had I gotten a Brazilian before coming here? My lady parts would certainly feel the breeze, and the cameras would get ends full. I glanced at Isolde. She was nearly there. I was sure she'd have no trouble showing off her body to God and everyone. But me, I had no desire for the entire supernatural community. And humans, too, watching at home to see me in my birthday suit. And Caspian. What about him? Damn it. I was back in my head, worrying instead of doing what had to be done. There was no other option. I closed my eyes and found the magic entangling it in my mind, as I was taught to do when I wanted to change back. My body shifted again, fur disappearing, limbs shrinking, until, finally, I stood on the platform. Completely without clothes. Someone down below whistled. I gave them the finger, then grabbed the rope, wrapped both hands around it, and jumped off the platform. The swing was exhilarating, even if I was bare-assed in front of everyone. And there was, indeed, a breeze chilling my ovaries. Maybe they'll blur me out. I could hope they didn't want to traumatize the children. My feet hit the other side. A hard thud on the wood, and I lurched forward, grabbing a pillar to stop myself from toppling over the other side. I took a moment to breathe and check on my opponents. As I'd thought, Isolde had no problem switching back to her human form and was primping her hair to make sure the curl had survived the transition. Her fake eyelashes, though, those were long gone, with that smug bit of satisfaction. I glanced out to plan my next move. There was a ladder down one I'd have to climb using my human form and, far below, a bit of ground that led to a huge vertical, slick-looking wall that someone would either have to scale or dig under. That was my plan. It might not be glamorous or sexy, but I knew I would win, trying to hide my embarrassment. I climbed down the ladder as fast as my without clothes ass could go. As soon as my feet were on the ground, I shifted again, feeling the ecstasy of my wolf form ripple over me once more. Damn, it feels good to be lupine. I readied my claws and began to dig at the base of the wall. Dirt flew everywhere, coating my fur, but I didn't stop. This contest was not about glamour. That was clear. It was about strength, speed, and cunning. So I dug with abandon, not worrying about how I would look afterward. Something I was pretty sure Isolde would have a hard time with. Take that, prissy bitch. I was making good progress until something huge and hairy landed on my back. What the hell? A dark brown wolf pinned me to the ground. She'd used the element of surprise to knock me flat and get her jaws around my neck before I even knew what hit me. Stupid, I thought. I'd been so engrossed in my task I hadn't watched my back. I started to struggle, but the wolf was using all her strength to keep me pinned. Why would someone stop competing and take the time to stop me? Wouldn't they want to win? Elise, stuck are you? Too bad. Isolde, in her human form, leaned over me, her blonde hair framing her bitch face as she peered into the one eye that was smashed into the dirt. And just when you made such a nice hole, I guess I'll have to use it. I growled and kicked my paws, but the wolf above me clamped down harder on my neck, squeezing my windpipe until I couldn't breathe. Good girl. Willow, Isolde said. Keep her pinned until everyone else is through. Vampire Dissection by Drake Mason and Eli Dweck. An undocumented changeling and forced to code as a low-level witch. The audacity. I wouldn't think little Willow could keep me pinned, but in her wolf form, she was incredibly strong. The wolf above me winced, but Isolde gave her a dirty look. Shut up, bitch. You'll do what I say if you know it's good for you. I can make your pack's life a living hell. I hadn't recognized Willow in her wolf form, but things were starting to make sense. Isolde was threatening Willow and her pack. Had that been why she'd betrayed me? I wanted to look her in the eyes, but that was hard to do with her teeth around my throat. I heard Isolde begin to dig and finish what had started. With her distracted, I knew I had one chance to convince Willow to leave the dark side. It was dangerous, but I knew it was my only shot. I knew I could try to communicate telepathically in my wolf form, but something told me speaking to her as the human friend she knew would have more impact. I began to shift out of my wolf form. Willow's teeth loosened, and she took a step back as my body came back into being. Willow, I said, holding out both hands and looking into her huge lupine eyes. I know you don't want to hurt me. The wolf stared back at me, her dark gaze taking me in. I know Isolde has threatened you, but you can't let her control you. If you do, her pack will really have all the power, and then they can do anything they want to us. We have to stand up to her. The wolf gave a low growl and took a step forward. It hadn't worked. She was still under Isolde's spell. I cringed, ready to shift back to my wolf form and fight. Willow crouched and jumped. I waited for her paws to smash me into the ground, but instead, she sailed overhead, blocking the other contestants that were lining up to slip under the only hole anyone had dug. Mine. The growl was for them. She was helping me, letting me get through next. Thanks, friend, I said before turning and shimmying under the wall. I emerged on the other side, dirty and panting. I pushed matted hair out of my eyes to find everyone looking at me. What? I said, trying to be nonchalant. Has anyone seen a without clothes lady before? Now can someone get me some clothes? A guard stepped over and handed me a robe, which I slipped into and cinched around my waist before turning toward Isolde, who was already dressed in a similar robe. You cheated, I said, pointing a finger. Isolde blinked and held a hand up to her chest, her face the picture of innocence me. I would never. She ran over and wrapped an arm around Caspian, who stood in the line of vampire suitors, but he stood stiffly beside her. She cheated. Howie's eyes were dark holes. He hadn't seen no. The wall had blocked the whole thing. Isolde maid will pin me down and keep me from winning. Caspian frowned and pulled his arm out of Isolde's grasp. Isolde made an exasperated sound. She lies. William, Caspian said, glancing around until he found his mentor. Isolde should be disqualified. What? Isolde said. No one said Isolde had helped to win. Caspian glowered, but William was nodding. Miss Thorne is right. There's nothing in the rules I laid out that said she couldn't manipulate the game in that way. She actually used her cunning ability. A big smile lit up Isolde's face. See, I know what I'm doing. I'm the winner. None of these chicken brains could have thought of something like that. She gestured around at the other girls, who were now gathering on this side of the wooden wall, without clothes and dirty. I'm in the top two. I win. Then she turned to Caspian. I claim you as my prize. Just a minute, William said. At the start, I mentioned that the top two contestants would compete in another contest that would determine the winner. Isolde's eyes went wide. Oh yes, I'd forgotten. The other contest. Unfortunately, it would be Isolde and me. What do we have to do? I asked. William glanced at Isolde. Being a good match isn't only about strength and cunning. It is also about diplomacy. Whoever can get the largest number of their fellow contestants to join their side will be considered the winner and pick their date. Easy, Isolde said smugly. Get them to join my side. Sadly, making friends had never been my strongest quality. Still, I saw the way Isolde controlled Willow. I was pretty sure that was how she was getting the other girls to fall in line too. I stepped away from her and turned to my fellow contestants. I know Isolde has threatened you, probably all of you, with harm to your packs if you don't do what she says. Yes, the Thorns are powerful, but you can't give in to tyranny. If you don't stand up to her now, imagine how hard it will be if they decide to come for your land, your resources. You're young. Some of the girls were nodding. Others were staring between us with fear on their faces. Don't listen to her, Isolde said, adopting her haughty air. My pack will always take care of those that are loyal. I can't say the same for those that betray us. She shot Willow, who was now in her human form and covered in a robe, an nasty glance. I'm a rave and moon, I added with conviction. My grandfather has led us fairly for many years. We want only peace and prosperity for our kind. Don't think you'll receive the same from Isolde and her ilk if they get their way. It's time, William said to the other girls. Make your choice. Willow walked to my side right away. Sylvia did too, but some of the other girls were more reluctant. Lobby slid over to Isolde's side, as did Nanette. My heart sank. How could they pick her? My words had meant nothing. But slowly, the remaining girls walked to my side, shooting Isolde dirty looks. It seemed she had made more enemies than I could have known. Willow gave my hand a squeeze. I had won. 7-3, William said, running a hand down his trim beard. Elise wins. I could only smile and turn to Caspian. I pick you, I said. I expected him to seem happy, or at least give a smile. But he simply nodded before turning and walking away. Chapter 17:8. Our very first date. I shouldn't have been nervous since we'd already shared a kiss, and HED seen me completely without clothes, but that was the case. I was more nervous than when Wall Dunkelpelt took me to my first middle school dance and tried to French kiss my windpipe, staring into the mirror. It felt as though a flock of birds was darting around inside my chest cavity. I had no idea how Caspian felt about me. Yes, we shared an intimate moment a few days ago, but that was before I purposely sabotaged our win. Plus, that had been alcohol, fueled and driven by pure lust. Did he prefer Isolde now? He taken my side when he learned Shed cheated, but that might only mean he hated deception. Maybe he didn't want me or Isolde. Maybe Hed end up with Sylvia or Willow or one of the other girls who was much less drama. And what exactly did I think our partnership should look like? He was still a vampire, still part of this abduction and forced competition. I knew that William was the brains behind the scenes, but Caspian was going along with it, even if at some level he appeared to be fighting it. I reminded myself that it didn't matter. I couldn't allow Isolde and Caspian to partner or mate. Whatever that meant. I needed to make sure of that and let the cameras and everyone at home know Caspian preferred me. I needed to show my grandfather I could do as he asked. Then, once the competition was over and the cameras turned off, I could do the right thing and tell Caspian to hit the road. There was less competition now. 3 females had been let go, and I was glad for their sake that they could go home to their families. Deep down, I wanted to be one of them, but I know that wasn't an option for me. The vampire suitors, or William or whoever was in charge of that decision, had determined that Paulina, Kaylee, and Savannah were no longer in the game. That left 7 of us and 7 vampire suitors, 1 for each of us. We'd been told now that every remaining shifter female would be offered one of the vampire suitors. I shuddered at the thought of any vamp trying to mate with me. Yet, I wondered if the other girls would take the vampires up on the offer. Would their families allow it? Would we see a bunch of vampies running around in 9 months? We still weren't exactly sure that was possible or what it might look like. But William and the others sure seemed to think it was. It breathed a sigh of relief for Willow. Though, she'd thought for sure she'd be sent home. But she wanted to stay. Selfishly, I still wanted her with me since we'd made a tentative peace. I understood her motives. But that didn't mean we were best IS again. It would take a while before I could trust her with my secrets. Speaking of secrets, Caspian and Nest Tapestry and the words Hed spoke and came to the forefront of my mind again. I was hoping that during the date I would have an opportunity to talk more about the claim that we were tied together. But would he speak to me at all? Ugh, everything was so complicated. Why are you frowning? You look fine. Miss, Morika said, walking back into the dressing room with a pair of heels in her hand. I need to look more than fine, I said, checking out the red dress from the back. You could almost see my panties, it dipped so low down my spine. It'd taken no chances this time. It let Morika pick out the sexiest dress in the closet and ply me with makeup. She had curled and styled my hair until I barely recognized myself. I had to admit I looked very glamorous. The cleavage the dress showed didn't hurt either. This is what they want. Right, I said, turning to check myself out from the front. You will knock, mister. Nightshade's socks off. She smiled faintly. Yeah, well see, I said skeptically. Beauty, strength, and cunning. What's not to like? She handed me the heels. I slipped them on, feeling unsteady on my feet, which matched how I was feeling inside. Thank you. Are you excited? Morika asked, peering at my reflection in the mirror. I shrugged. I don't know. I thought you didn't want Mr. Nightshade, Morika said, tilting her head. You do want him now. I blinked a few times, thinking about her question. Frankly, I don't know if I want him, and I don't know if I have any choice. She shrugged. Well, which? I guess tonight you'll find out the answer to one of those things. A knock sounded at the door. Morika and I turned toward it. Morika opened the door to reveal, not Caspian, not the guards, but a camera crew. The director of Vampirate's seen around giving orders stepped into my room. We need some shots with Elise. Can we set up near the fireplace? Flustered, I followed them into my bedroom and watched as they arranged a chair near the fire and set their camera up opposite it. The director was tall with dark, Curly hair and a thin, pale face. I didn't like him. How could I? I had no idea what he was doing to the footage he shot, twisting me into something he wanted me to be. And to what end? To make me seem desirable. Or was it the opposite? Make me seem like a shrill harpy. Either way, none of it could be the real me. I hadn't been the real me since our limo pulled up for almost a week ago. I thought I was supposed to be filmed live, I said, turning toward the director. This will be recorded and edited before being shown to the public, so if you have any ideas of shouting out secrets, there's no point. They'll all end up on the cutting room floor. I frowned. I hadn't planned on shouting secrets. I had no secrets to reveal, but the idea of my words being edited solidified my worst fears. Still, I had no choice. Did I? It was play the game or leave. I sat in the chair at the camera. The large, dark lens made me feel as without clothes as I had been on that rope swing. Now tell us how excited you are to be going on a date with Caspian. And don't be afraid to elaborate. To gush. He gestured forward with his hands as if miming emotions gushing out of his chest. I furrowed my brow at his words. Gush. You need to smile. To smile. He pulled his hands across his mouth in an upward motion as if I had never heard of the term before. Smile. Be charming act. I didn't like any of these things. But again, it was all part of their game. I pressed a smile onto my lips that I hoped looked original and took a deep breath. Tonight, I have my first date with Caspian, I said slowly and deliberately, and am very excited. Cut. The director waved his hands. You don't sound excited. Elise, you sound like a sloth that just woke up. Gee, thanks. You know Caspian is the most eligible bachelor in the Northern Hemisphere. Right. There is no other vampire, shifter, human, or whatever that comes near his level of wealth and power. So people keep telling me, as if reminding me of all that would make me less nervous. Okay, so act like it. And rolling. He pointed at me. I tried again. I have my first date with the most eligible bachelor in the Northern Hemisphere, and am very excited. I smiled and batted my eyelashes. And nervous. Am very nervous. The director shook his head but kept the camera rolling. What would it mean to you if you were matched with Caspian? I blinked at him, my words running dry. What would it mean? Did I, Elise Raven Moon, want to be matched with Caspian Nightshade? Could I overlook what he was? Could I ignore his strange behavior? Would we be together as partners forever? Or just until we were able to miraculously produce offspring? What would that even look like? My hands balled my dress into knots. Good God. The director pushed his hands through his hair. Well, just work with what we have. Let's go. He turned, and the camera crew began following him out. That certainly hadn't gone well. I could only hope the date with Caspian might turn out better. An hour later, I was sitting in a candle-lit dining room, waiting to find out how the night would unfold. After the interview, guards escorted me to the small dining room. I was grateful not to be in the massive dining room where we'd eaten before. This room had a table set for two, a warm fire glowing in a fireplace, and soft music playing from speakers overhead. They'd outdone themselves with the place settings. Everything glittered as if it had been touched by Midas himself, and I could smell roasted vegetables and something sweet wafting from the kitchen on the other side of the far door. Everything seemed perfect. There was just one problem. Caspian was nowhere to be found. He'd been sitting for almost an hour alone, sipping wine and going over everything in my head. Over and over. Yet he still wasn't here. It was one thing to be fashionably late. I could deal with that. But then 20 minutes passed. And then half an hour. He was really pushing me. A power move for sure. But an hour late. Now I was sure he was just standing me up. Was this his idea of getting back at me? Humiliate me in front of the entire viewing audience. I took the cup of wine into my mouth and slugged it down. It was my second glass. If Caspian was careful, I was going to get drunk. Find him. and give him a piece of my mind. Or worse, a piece of his fist. Is he coming? I said, turning to the cameraman in the back of the room. He gave me a shrug. Great. I grabbed a wine bottle and filled up my glass. One more glass and I was going to find Caspian, grab him by the throat. The door blew open, and Caspian rushed into the room. He was a disheveled mess. His suit coat was missing, and his shirt was rumpled. HED turned up both sleeves to reveal his muscled forearms. Parts of the shirt were torn. Several buttons had been ripped away, and there was a dark stain on his chest. Was that red water? I forgot all the nasty things I was going to say to him as I stood up and walked around the table toward him. What the hell happened to you? I said, reaching for his chest. Are you hurt? He dodged my touch, heading instead for the wine bottle. He didn't bother with a glass, tipping the mouth of the bottle to his own. He took a huge drink. I watched the dark red liquid dribble from the corners of his mouth. He slammed the bottle down on the table with a heavy thunk. Finally, he looked at me. Sorry, I'm late. I gave him an incredulous look. Sorry, I'm late. That's all you have to say. What the hell happened? Caspian. He shook his head and pushed rumpled hair out of his eyes. Nothing. Nothing. I gestured at what was clearly a wound on his chest. You call that nothing? He glanced at the wound, his jaw tight. It was clear it hurt him. Vampires were supposed to heal with incredible speed, but his cut was still dribbling dark red water onto his white shirt. And he wasn't mending any faster than all the injured vamps that day in the gym. Why? I grabbed an napkin and a glass of water. Let me clean it, I said, more a command than I'd ever given him. He inhaled deeply and gave me a single nod. Carefully, I pulled back the shirt. A Ross lit the skin on his chest in two. I winced at the gore, but knew what I had to do. I wet the napkin in the water and carefully dabbed the wound clean, trying to reveal how bad it really was. Being close to him engaged all my senses. I could smell his familiar cologne beneath the scent of red water and wine. His body was cool to the touch. So why was mine feeling so flushed? This is pretty wide, but with your healing powers, it should get better without stitches. Right. All you need is disinfectant and a bandage, I said, setting the red watery cloth down. He took my hand, drawing it into his. No disinfectant or bandage needed, but thank you. Don't thank me, I said. Tell me what is going on. Why can't you heal? Is this part of what's going on with the vampires? This sickness? His eyes darted toward the corner of the room. Those damn cameras. There's no sickness. The heat I was feeling was starting to simmer over into anger. Forget those stupid cameras. Or better yet, send them away. You can do that, right? He shook his head and whispered in my ear. I can't do much anymore. I'm trapped here. Same as you. A shiver jolted right to my core. Somehow, I was feeling confused and turned on by his closeness. Nothing was making sense. How could he be trapped? He was in charge. Or was this some sort of familial duty he had to perform to please William? Pulling away, he reached for the wine bottle and took another long swig. I gave a mirthless laugh and decided to probe further. You're trapped. Same as me? I asked, keeping my voice low. He was finally talking, and I didn't want him to be dissuaded by the cameras. Are you kidding? If you feel trapped here, imagine how I feel. My grandfather is dying, and I can't even go see him. Suddenly, my calm, cool demeanor was gone. Anger and sorrow seeped into my words until I was choking on them. The wine wasn't helping here. Tell me what is going on. Now, Elise. He reached for me, but I stepped away. Don't. I took 4 steps and reached for the doorknob, ready to leave. He grabbed my wrist, stopping me. When I looked up in anger, all I saw reflected back was pain. Please don't leave. I'm not myself. I haven't been in a while. This game I nodded. I know. At least this emotion I could understand. All the manipulation and lies were getting to everyone. I stared at him, so vulnerable, and Cal didn't help but feel for him. He had to be under constant strain too. And now someone was attacking him. My enemies used poorly constructed insults. His enemies used blades. With a boldness I hadn't felt in a while, I touched his skin near where the wound was. His chest was cold to the touch and solid, like marble. He inhaled as if my fingertips on his skin were either hurting him or giving him great pleasure. Some wounds never heal, I whispered. He grabbed my wrist, forcefully at first, but then allowed his touch to turn gentle. It'll heal with your help. Then he pulled me into an embrace as his lips found mine. He seared through me as Caspian's kiss took hold of my senses. His lips were cool and soft, but his hands on my neck were firm and insistent. I could tell he wanted me by his growl and the way he pulled me to him. His hard body closed the gap between us until we were practically wrapped around each other. I cowed and helped myself. My hand slid up his back and gripped his shirt, holding on for dear life as his tongue slid into my mouth. A taste of wine flooded me as my chest heaved and my thighs trembled. How could he turn me into jelly with one kiss? But he could. Easily. He sent shivers up my spine and had me clinging to him, longing to unbutton what remained of his shirt and slide my hands up his smooth chest. I wanted to do that and more, but there were cameras. We weren't alone. Instead, I leaned into him, inwardly groaning as he caught my bottom lip between his teeth. He did it gently, but God, was it sexy. I wanted to urge him on. I wanted to slide out of this dress and the sound of breaking would drew us out of each other's arms. One moment, the door was there. The next, it blasted open and smashed against the table. Glass broke and items toppled, but I cowed and see what was happening, because Caspian had already shielded me behind him with his wall of a body. I hate to break up the party, a voice said. I glanced around Caspian to see Callan and to other vamps standing in the doorway. Sorry to break up a little PDA, Callan said, his eyes narrow. Were you on second base? Third, Callan. Caspian growled. Get out of here. Callan smiled smugly as his thugs entered the room and began flanking Caspian. Sorry, old chap, but I can't do that. You and I have unfinished business. Then Callan raised at Agar and attacked. Chapter 18. It sounded like animals tearing each other apart. One moment, I was squished between Caspian's massive body and the wall. And the next, I was witnessing the worst knockdown, drag-out fight I'd ever seen. The three vamps I had never seen before and Callan attacked Caspian with such vicious ferocity. I was stunned. Fangs and claws flashed as they grappled with him. They were trying to kill him, pin him down. Callan growled as he held the blade aloft, but the other two cowled and contained Caspian. He dodged and fought, catching one in the stomach with a backward kick, before ducking under the arms of the other and using his momentum to send that vampire crashing into the wall. The room shook. A candle fell over and set the tablecloth on fire. The smell of burned fabric flooded the air. The cameraman ran past me, blasting through the kitchen doors with unprecedented speed. Caspian's eyes tracked the escaping man as he circled away from Callan and his knife, his back to the wall, and his eyes flicking between his opponent and me. Elise, go get out of here. Though he wanted me to leave him to fight 3 against 1. But the henchmen were getting up and blocking the exits as Callan advanced around the destroyed table, blade at the ready. Caspian was unarmed. How long could he fight all 3? This isn't your fight, a voice inside me said. I should slip out and warn someone. But what if something happened to Caspian? HED protected me. Could I really leave him here alone? Naughty fight wasn't fair. Time to even things up. I grabbed a heavy metal candle holder and raised it over my shoulder like a baseball bat. Elise. Caspian's voice cut off with a strangled sound. My eyes cut left as Callan pressed the blade to Caspian's throat. The henchman didn't even glance my way. I wasn't a threat to them. I are forward. In 2 bounds. I was on Callan. I raised the candle holder and smashed it down with as much force as I could muster. It cracked into his skull hard, then reverberated back, making me stumble. It was a solid blow. Caspian let out a strangled sound, one of surprise and anger, but he whirled on me, moving lightning fast as he shifted the blade to the other hand. I felt a slash along my side. White, hot pain blotted out all thought as a yelp escaped my throat. I stumbled back as I felt warm, wet liquid begin to slide down my abdomen. He stared at me, surprised, as if he had no intention of cutting me. But then his face morphed from surprise to anger. "You should have stayed out of this," he said, looking at the red water on the knife. "But you're a very stupid girl, and that'll be your downfall. Stay away from her." Caspian lunged like fighting was all he'd ever known. He swung fast, hitting Caspian 3 times before I could even process what was happening, even with his vampire senses and speed. Caspian barely knew what hit him. He dropped the blade, crying out as Caspian got him in a headlock. The 2 henchmen started forward, but I stepped in their way. They stared, unsure of what to do. It had been clear in Caspian's reaction that they weren't here to hurt me, or at least that was what I was counting on. The confusion gave Caspian the seconds he needed. He threw Caspian to the ground, bent down, and picked up the dagger. Chest heaving, he stared at the blade. An iron blade slathered with garlic. "Caspian, even I wouldn't have thought you'd stoop that low." Caspian groaned. "You and William won't be in control forever. Nightshade, someone will take you down. Not you, and not today. What you didn't count on was the bravery of our guest." Caspian turned to me, but his triumphant smile turned to fear. "Elise, you're bleeding." Was I? I'd forgotten. I had enough time to glance down at my torn rest covered in red water, before the world began to dim. The last thing I remembered before it all went black was Caspian's arm slipping around me. I awoke in a bed in a candlelit room with no idea of where I was. When I tried to sit up, the dull ache in my side reminded me of what had happened. I touched the wound, only to find it cleaned and bandaged. I was also wearing a sleeveless white night never seen before. So I was lying in a familiar bed. I was in Caspian's dusty bedroom. Footsteps on the stone floor. Caspian appeared at my bedside, looking concerned. "You're awake. How are you feeling?" I blinked up at him. He was wearing a t-shirt and slacks, which was an unusual look for him, though he looked hot as ever. The male could probably wear a potato sack and still stop traffic. His torn shirt was gone, as was the red water, though he still looked paler than normal. Was that because of the fight or worry over my safety? "I'm okay. What happened?" "Caspian," he hissed. "He wounded you with the blade. I would have torn him to pieces, but I wanted to tend to you first. Luckily for both of us, it was only a superficial scratch. It'll heal quickly." "Caspian, that asshole, why did he attack you?" Caspian handed me a glass of water. He's never been keen on the Nightshades being head of our region's vampires. His coven has always been at odds with ours, much like your pack in the Thorns. William invited him to this game following his favorite adage, "Keep your friends close and your enemies closer." Caspian has wanted to challenge me for a while, and he saw tonight as an opportunity. He didn't count on you, though. Caspian appraised me as he gave a pleased nod. "You fought like you were born to do it." "I was," I said, sipping the water. "My family has always trained for moments like that. It's my experience that you don't get to be in charge by soul diplomacy. Not with shifters. Not vampires. Either." He sat on the edge of the bed, gazing down at me. "Why does he hate you so much?" Caspian shrugged. "The vampire who sired Caspian, the leader of his coven, she and William, have an unpleasant history together. He has never told me all the details, but it goes way back. She has been filling Caspian's head with untold hatred toward me. I sometimes wonder if he even knows why he's supposed to be fighting me." "That's crazy." "Yes, it is. Look. I'm sorry you got caught up in this. When I saw you hurt his jaw in control of himself, you didn't make Caspian attack, and you bandaged my wound. So I think self-loathing is not necessary. I said, sitting up. What will happen to him now? Caspian shook his head sadly. Not enough. I would put his head on a spike, but his coven is prominent enough. Ensure William will insist that it was nothing, a mere spat, and allow him to stay. If Callan remains here, that means HES not elsewhere causing trouble. And if I complain, William will say I can take care of myself. He'll be allowed to stay. Rage burned in Caspian's eyes. Likely, I thought this over, realizing that vampire politics was just as bad as shifter politics. While I was dealing with Isolde, Caspian was having a similar issue of his own. At least it gave us something in common. Thank you for taking care of me, I said, poking at the bandage under my gown. Don't fuss with it, he said, gently moving my hand away. I know shifters can heal, though not as fast as vampires, but since you can't shift to make it better, you best leave it alone. What about you? I pointed at his chest. He touched the spot and tightened his jaw. The garlic on the blade will make the wound take longer to heal, but it'll be okay, hun.
This didn't explain all the other times it did see men wounded and their healing slowed.
As always, there was more here he was not telling me. Why do I feel like you're hiding something? He was hurting. I could see it in the hard line of his jaw and the way he sat upright. At least we know now you're not the only one who hides things. His eyes locked onto me, giving me a pointed look. I pressed my lips together before letting out a big sigh. The game I threw. Yes, that. I can explain do. Clasping my hands together, I tried to think of the right words to express why I made us lose the game. Do I tell him the truth? Do I lie? When I looked into his dark eyes, I knew there were far too many secrets as it was. If I wanted him to start being honest, I needed to try it out myself. I made a split-second decision to knock the barrels over. It was more of an impulse than a well-thought-out plan. I think I was scared. Scared, he said, lifting an eyebrow. Scared of me? I paused, willing the right words to come. Scared of us. He dropped his gaze to the floor as the silence seeped into the room. Would this be when HED kick me out? Tell me to pack my bags. I'm scared. Too of this. He gestured between him and me. Then he got up, walked to the wall, and lifted up the bottom of the tapestry HED torn down the other night so the candlelight could illuminate more of it. The ancient fabric showed woven scenes in faded blues and greens. A white figure caught my eye. A white wolf. My mouth went dry. What does this mean? I asked, pointing at it. He shook his head. This side shows the vampires. He traced the dark figures on one side of the tapestry. Long, little bit, long. Thinly figures that looked more like specters than men. Yet one figure stood out. Much better defined and lighter in color than the others. It was clear the weaver wanted the viewer to pay attention to that figure, that he was special, and this side shows the shifters. Caspian pointed to the white wolf and the other brown wolves behind it. It is supposed to prophesize a time when we come together, when we join as one. It seems the prophecy points to two people in particular. Is that why you vampires took over our mating games? He nodded, pausing for a long time and making me think he was going to answer. At last, he said, I feel I can't trust you. Elise. His dark gaze met mine as if searching for a reason that would prove his intuition wrong. When he continued, I decided he hadn't found one. We are dying out. No one wants to talk about it. The vampire numbers in our region are dwindling and fast. The elders are sick. They've tried every remedy from science to ancient wisdom, to no avail, and the new vampires either don't turn or die in the process. And you've seen how our healing power has diminished. Everyone is terrified, but William thinks the prophecy will save us somehow. The shifters are sick. Too, I couldn't believe I was sharing this with a vampire. Had I lost my mind? Maybe the loss of red water had turned my brain into a limb prison. Still, I continued. Young are scarce and some die before their first birthday. And the elders. The words caught in my throat as I thought of my grandfather. Was he even still alive? Tears threatened to fall, but I wouldn't let them. What good would it do to cry here? Caspian watched me carefully, the candlelight playing on his handsome features. We need to figure this out, for both our sakes. William knows more, but HES not trusting anyone with the knowledge. Not even me. And I don't know why. I've always been his confidant. But lately, HES grown distant, pushing me away. I think he even hates me now. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. He gave me a tender look. It's okay. He has changed over time. I don't think I like the person HES become. Not the person he wishes me to be. I nodded. How do we learn more? The library. If there's information to be had, it'll be there. William has quite the collection. Ah, yes. The library. It'd been there, but with Callan lurking around, I hadn't gotten very far. When do we go? I asked. Are you feeling up to it now? I threw back the covers and swung my legs over the side of the bed. Am up to it, but I'll need other clothes. I've spent far too much time barely dressed as it is. Caspian cracked the first smile he had in a long time. I don't know. I do so enjoy you barely dressed. I gave him a mock glare before getting up to dig through ancient wardrobe. Dream on, vampire prince. If we're going to spend our hot date being attacked first and at the library digging through dusty tomes second, I'm going to wear pants. You have to earn the sexy outfit. Is that right? In that case, I promise you I will.